Good evening, everyone. I'm the storyteller, and I am here to help you sleep better with true horror stories. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like my video. I would love to know where you are from and what time you're watching this video. So please leave a comment to let me know, and I will draw from that experience to tell even better stories. When you are ready, feel free to relax. A few years back, I made a grave mistake, one I deeply regret and wish I could undo. It's an action for which I can never truly atone, though I would give anything for the chance. It all began when Emma ended our relationship. I realize this might seem trivial now, a classic tale of a heartbroken guy acting foolishly, and indeed, that's exactly what it was. Yet, the consequences were utterly devastating. At that time, I was just 19, and she was the first girl I ever loved. If you've experienced something similar, you understand the depth of that pain. At that stage, everything feels so intensely, especially heartbreak. Emma and I had been together for 2 years, but our relationship was far from drama-free. Being young and immature, we often found ourselves in arguments, sometimes over trivial matters. Yet, we always managed to reconcile. However, this last time was different. It wasn't sparked by something trivial, like a careless comment or a forgotten birthday. No, this last argument, it was because she was involved with another guy from college, right in front of me. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. Instead, she told me she didn't want to be with me anymore, that her feelings had changed, and that she was sorry but had fallen for someone else. Hearing this shattered my heart, as I still had feelings for Emma. It hurt deeply to realize that if she no longer loved me, she could have been honest. We could have had a conversation about it, but instead, she chose to stay with me while she was moving on. I found myself caught in a web of emotions when I confronted her about her entanglement with someone else. Her response was to excuse herself, claiming she was waiting for the right moment to share the truth, as if she believed sparing my feelings would somehow lessen the blow. Little did she realize that being the last to know had already shattered my heart. The pain I felt was profound, but beyond that, I was left with a sense of offense and insult. After 2 long years of unconditional love and unwavering loyalty, I was met with nothing but deceit and betrayal in return. This was terrible, yet the most painful part was that I still loved her, even when I felt consumed by hatred for what she had done to me. I couldn't bring myself to let it go. I recall being engulfed in depression and anger, unable to sleep. My frustration and fury were so intense that I could feel my body trembling with rage. One night, with my heart heavy with darkness, I opened my laptop and accessed the deep web. I wasn't an expert. In fact, I had spent countless hours trying, but without success. As I navigated through the familiar landscape of illicit exchanges and countless forums, I found myself lost, unsure of what I sought or where to uncover it. Yet, beneath the surface, a deeper understanding stirred within me. I craved something that would allow me to retaliate, to inflict the same pain she had caused me. I yearned for her to experience the shame that had haunted me, to feel the humiliation I had endured at her hands. In that moment, the desire for retribution consumed me. Images and recordings of her from our shared moments, personal images, and I recognize this may seem cruel, but in that surge of anger and bitterness, my thoughts were consumed with the desire to inflict pain. I believed it was a clever move to leverage this material against her. So I began to click through link after link until I stumbled upon something that truly piqued my interest. It was a forum, one named Naughty List. And what captivated me about this forum was its opening question. Do you know anyone who's been naughty? Perhaps it would be wise to consider placing him or her on the naughty list. Upon reflection, I realized this was exactly what I needed. I planned to upload the personal photos and videos I had of her and possibly link her social networks to see who would be laughing in the end. I even contemplated adding a destination, but since she had returned to live with her mother, I decided against it. However, the forum turned out to be different from my expectations. Rather than a straightforward homepage, it featured various sections labeled as punishments. They were centered around the kind of punishment you wish to impose on someone deemed naughty. I recall how theatrical all these punishment categories appeared. Some involved elves in a pond or icy landscapes. One, in particular, piqued my interest, a gift from Santa. It made me chuckle and approach it with a lighter heart, so I clicked on it. After that, I had to wait about 2 minutes for a bright white page to load, filled with numerous black and red text boxes, the title of which read, "Santa is ready to compile your naughty list. Just provide the details and he'll take care of the rest." It's charming, yet I found it somewhat amusing. I completed the form thoroughly, including name, age, birthday, and links to their social networks. The latter intrigued me the most, as I mentioned my plan to share these photos and videos on the platforms. So there it was, everything I had eagerly sought, and naturally, I had already uploaded the photos once the process was finished. A delightful little Christmas roulette wheel appeared, which I had to spin, and depending on what it threw, would determine the severity of the punishment that Santa would give her for naughtiness. Upon activating it, it stopped a jackpot. I remember feeling that sense of mischievous satisfaction, imagining Emma's face as she felt exposed while my face broke into a half smile. The only thing I regretted, then, was that the program wouldn't allow me to upload any video, but I thought the photos would be more than enough. At that point, it asked me again for the person's address, but as I told before, I wasn't prepared to take that step. Instead, I inscribed the name of his hometown. Our hometown, a decision I now deeply regret. I truly wish I had refrained from doing it. Once I entered the information, without a moment's pause, I clicked the submit button. After a few seconds, a small text box appeared, asking if I was sure the data was correct. Santa won't forget it. At that moment, I double-checked the list, ensuring everything was accurate and that the data entered was final. Then I pressed yes, believing everything was perfect until this option emerged. I was taken aback by the unexpected message. After a brief wait, the page revealed a banner that read, "Thank you for adding someone else to the naughty list. We really appreciate it. Now sit back and relax. Santa will give this naughty one the proper punishment. He will soon slide his sack down the chimney. Ho ho ho. Santa knows when you've been naughty." It caught me off guard, and I needed a moment to fully grasp the implications of the words. Once I did, I couldn't help but chuckle at how dreadful it all came across. It had this strange mix of being both provocative and unsettling, which seemed to fit the overall vibe of the forum. But honestly, I dismissed it as unrealistic, so it didn't bother me. I had reached my objective, and all I could think about was how, once everything was completed and shared, people would start reaching out on social media. Then, the tables would turn, and they would be the ones feeling exposed. As unsettling as that thought was, it oddly gave me a sense of relief. After shutting down my laptop and meticulously cleaning everything, I ensured there was no way to be tracked or implicated. I was already well protected, but as anyone familiar with the darker corners of the internet knows, caution is paramount. The following morning, I awoke with an unsettlingly large smile, reminiscent of the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland. My joy was undeniable, and reflecting on it now evokes a complex mix of feelings. Though I felt a pang of shame, that day I was filled with anticipation, eager to witness the consequences of my efforts. I longed to see Emma engulfed in rage, to have her confront the pain she had inflicted on me. My desire was to shatter her composure, to make her feel the same worthlessness and humiliation she had imposed on me. Yet, to my profound disappointment, the day unfolded without the expected drama. I waited, heart racing, for her to storm to my door or inundate my phone with frantic calls, but there was nothing. No calls, no frantic texts, no explosive social media rants. Just silence. The most frustrating aspect was that if something had gone wrong, I had no means to confirm it. I searched tirelessly for that link, but it eluded me. Days turned into more days, and with each passing moment, my initial excitement dwindled, leaving me feeling disheartened and upset. Clearly, it hadn't functioned as intended. No one would remain so composed if it had. I couldn't approach him or investigate further, as that would implicate me as the one at fault. Eventually, after a prolonged period of uncertainty and no answers, I resigned myself to the situation. As the days passed, the entire experience of the breakup faded into the background. I found myself less affected, no longer consumed by the emotions that had once overwhelmed me. Nearly a month had gone by, and I had simply stopped dwelling on it. It became a dull memory. The realization that it had all been a facade oddly brought me a sense of relief, as if I had purged the turmoil from my mind. The desire for revenge lost its grip on me. Yet, just a few days later, a loud knock on the door jolted me awake. At that moment, all the earlier turmoil of my relationship faded from my thoughts, leaving me feeling quite disoriented. I rarely have visitors. You can picture my astonishment when I flung it open, only to be met by the stern faces of two police officers. Seeing them standing there, I couldn't help but think, well, this is it. I'm going to prison. Everyone will likely perceive me as a low-life weirdo, which, to be honest, I was the moment they asked to come in. I held back from making a scene, trying to avoid escalating the situation. I was genuinely surprised they hadn't arrested me. If that had been their intention, they would have acted on it immediately. So, I figured I should find out what they wanted. But what they revealed next left me utterly breathless. When was the last time you? When I saw Emma, I was momentarily at a loss for words, likely appearing as the most guilty person imaginable. Realizing this, I quickly composed myself, attempting to respond with as much calmness as I could muster. It had been about 5 weeks since we broke up, and I confirmed this to them. However, that didn't spare me from their probing questions. They asked where I was on the night of the 6th. I told them the truth. I was at home. Can anyone verify this? They pressed. Well, not exactly, I replied, as I live alone, but I was dropped off at home after work. And my colleagues can confirm this, as it's a routine we follow after every shift. I mentioned that it was around 10:30 when I got home. The cameras at work should show me leaving around 10:20, and it's only about a 10-minute drive. When asked if I left my property at any time after returning, I replied no, trying to sound as confident as possible. I added that the CCTV outside the apartments would verify my statement. His intense gaze seemed to waver and slacken more and more, which gave me a sense of hope. It was a moment ripe for inquiry, and I couldn't help but ask what was unfolding. What he revealed next took my breath away. He informed me that, while he couldn't divulge specifics of an ongoing investigation, he could share that Emma had been reported missing and hadn't been seen for nearly a week. The last sighting was by her mother, who watched her leave for a shopping trip, only for her to never come back. The officers departed soon after, expressing their gratitude for my cooperation. The following day, they examined the CCTV footage with my boss. My colleague confirmed my story, verifying that I was indeed telling the truth. Days turned into weeks, and still, there was nothing from Emma. It felt as if she had vanished in a thin air. I couldn't believe it. Surely, it couldn't have been my fault. I wondered if some creep had stalked her through her social networks and discovered her address after I posted it with the images. But it had to be a coincidence. That ridiculous forum couldn't be real. I mean, Santa's naughty list? Come on, get a grip, I told myself. The first time this possibility emerged in my mind, the weight of it grew heavier with each passing moment. I knew I wasn't physically responsible for what had happened to Emma. Yet somehow, I felt as if I had set the wheels in motion. The guilt consumed me, as if I had directly harmed her. This was the girl I once loved, the girl I still loved, and I had played a part in this. She and her poor mother had been apart for years, and I was the one who facilitated their reconciliation, all in hopes of bringing her back. To the joy of being with her mother again, and then out of pure selfishness and resentment, just destroyed her worse than I could have ever imagined during those weeks when nothing was heard from Emma. I could not live with the guilt and the immense shame I felt. I tried to go on normally with my life, but it was impossible. I could not sleep, I could not eat, but I knew I deserved it. I deserved this pie. And that shook me every time I caught myself feeling sorry for myself. I reminded myself that I was not a victim, but that I am a monster and coward, a wolf in sheep's clothing. If anyone deserved a horrible fate, it was me, not her. I was so selfish, so disgusting and pathetic that I began to drink myself unconscious. Anything to numb the pain burning inside me. Anything to erase the image of her terrified face and the sounds of her screams from my mind. God only knows what she could be enduring or if she was even alive anymore. I couldn't even go to the police. How could I? Confessing to what I did would only make me a suspect and change nothing. To assist in locating her, or perhaps I was merely succumbing to my own fears. But regardless, it proved futile and she vanished for weeks. Each morning, I awaited news, yet no updates came, and with each passing day, a fragment of my spirit withered away. It was sheer agony until, at last, the day arrived when she was discovered. However, upon receiving the news, the reality was so shattering that I knew I would never truly heal. Emma's body was found in a dilapidated factory on the outskirts of the neighboring town. I was in disbelief, feeling a constriction in my throat. The moment I found myself gasping for air, I clung to the hope that the details of the discovery might somehow be erroneous. Yet, reality proved unforgiving. There were no errors to be found. I had wished for her to endure the utmost pain, and it seemed my desires had manifested in the most horrific way. Emma was discovered crammed into one of the decrepit factory chimneys, her lifeless form ensconced in a sack of toys. Stripped of her dignity, her body had succumbed to decay. At that instant, disbelief washed over me, and the weight of the revelation nearly crushed my spirit. When the officer mentioned that her body was nearly unrecognizable and that they could only identify her because there was a paper note inside one of her eye sockets with the phrase, "Naughty number 22, Emma. You must have been a good girl. Santa always knows when you've been naughty," I fainted. I collapsed to the floor right where I was and hit my head hard on impact. This had to be some kind of cruel prank. When I regained consciousness, I hoped and prayed that it was just a bad dream. It felt like a dream, but it was all too real, a nightmare that unfolded in reality, and I can't shake the feeling that it was my doing. Emma, I'm so deeply sorry. Sorry for what they did to you, and sorry for my own actions that contributed to your pain. Guilt haunts me every single day. Not a moment passes without thoughts of you and the consequences of my foolishness. It's a burden I bear, one that will follow me until my last breath. I understand that eventually I will face the repercussions, though I feel like I'm already suffering the consequences. I never realized the true weight of blood until now. While the importance of saving a life is undeniable, my experiences with donating blood often felt underwhelming. Each time I visited the blood bank, the most I received in return were a few cookies and a glass of juice. College expenses were proving to be more burdensome than I had anticipated, and instant noodles and ramen quickly became my mainstay. Balancing my job with my studies was a daily challenge. One evening, I found myself delving deeper into the dark web, intrigued by the offerings of various online stores, though I never made any purchases. Anything on the dark net had never crossed my mind, especially since I didn't have any money. Then, I stumbled upon a link titled "Blood Donors Needed Bitcoin Payments." My curiosity piqued. I clicked and was directed to the page instantly. Upon entering, I noticed a list of blood types alongside their monetary value per 100 milliliters, and the payouts were astonishing. I was taken aback when I saw that for my blood type, AB negative, they were offering $25 for just 100 milliliters. The amount was truly surprising. Other blood types held significantly less value compared to O positive, which, being the most common, was priced at only $10 per 100 milliliters. The page offered little else of interest, aside from a contact form for those willing to donate their blood. Without much hesitation, I opened the form and swiftly completed it. They simply requested my blood type, email, and any medical conditions I might have. After submitting the form, I exited the site and resumed my search in other high-end stores to discover their pricing. Medicines, not for any particular reason, but out of sheer curiosity, as I stumbled upon a plethora of exotic remedies available at absurdly low prices. For a fleeting moment, the thought of becoming a kind of pharmaceutical kingpin danced in my mind. Just moments later, a new email arrived, its subject line reading "Blood for Bitcoin." Intrigued, I clicked to open it, revealing a response to the form I had submitted earlier. It simply stated, "Thank you for your interest. I want your blood type. Please reply. On Tuesday of the following week, please ensure that your Bitcoin wallet and address are ready. Before midnight, place a 100 milliliters vial of your blood in your mailbox, and we will arrange for its collection. Once we have received it, a transfer of 425 SDM Bitcoin will be made to the address in your wallet. If the blood is not deposited in the mailbox that night, we will not reach out to you again. Additionally, if the quality of the blood does not meet our standards, we will not proceed with the collection." There's also an Amazon link provided for purchasing a kit to collect blood at home, along with a YouTube link for instructional guidance. Collecting your own blood is quite intriguing. I initially thought this could be legitimate, so I replied to the email, inquiring if I could send it to an address instead of having it picked up from my mailbox. A few minutes later, I received a response stating that this wasn't possible, as temperature fluctuations during mailing would compromise the blood. They requested my address and the address of my Bitcoin wallet, assuring me they would pick it up from my mailbox next Tuesday night. After some consideration, I felt uneasy about sharing my address, but I moved on. At the door, there resided an elderly gentleman who, I believed, wouldn't object to my utilizing his mailbox in the dead of night. I responded to the correspondence with a simple, "Okay, sounds good," sharing my neighbor's address along with the details of my Bitcoin wallet. Subsequently, I ordered the blood kit via Amazon, scheduled for delivery the following day. A week passed, and before I realized it, Tuesday had arrived. That evening, around 9 o'clock, I was confident the neighbors had settled in for the night, signaling that it was time to put my plans into action and implement everything I had prepared. I watched a YouTube tutorial and began drawing my blood. It wasn't too challenging for me since I had donated before, so I had a general idea of the process. It was almost as straightforward as inserting the needle and watching the blood flow into the vial. The vials I ordered from Amazon were 120 milliliters, so I filled them to the brim before removing the needle and applying some pressure with a cotton ball. I stepped outside to the neighbor's mailbox, lifted the lid, and dropped in the vial. I hurried back to my house, walking quickly while keeping an eye out. After ensuring everything was safe, I entered the house and retreated to my room, where I spent some time gaming. They had instructed me to wait until midnight, suggesting that any visitors wouldn't arrive until then. I planned to stay awake as long as possible, hoping to catch a glimpse of the person coming for the vial, unless, of course, it was all just a cruel joke from some dark web prankster. In that case, the worst outcome would be my neighbors discovering a vial of blood in their mailbox come morning. The thought of their reactions brought a small chuckle to my lips. Turned off all the lights in my house just before midnight and settled by my bedroom window, leaving the curtains slightly ajar to keep an eye on the mailbox. To pass the time, I scrolled through my phone, engaging with social media, messaging friends, and browsing Reddit. At 1 o'clock, I noticed the street light flickering as if something had briefly obstructed its glow. I glanced down the road and spotted a tall figure clad entirely in black, moving swiftly along the sidewalk. The man approached my neighbor's mailbox, and I observed him closely. Clad in a black hoodie, the figure emerged from the shadows, his face and hands strikingly pale under the dim glow of the streetlights. He approached the neighbor's mailbox, lifting the lid with a deliberate motion, inspecting the jar inside as if ensuring all was as it should be. Satisfied, he turned and retreated into the darkness across the street. I felt a rush of mixed emotions as I closed the curtains tightly and settled onto my bed, a thrill coursing through me at the thought of having been compensated for my efforts. Some money and unease followed his enigmatic arrival, leaving me to ponder his intentions with the blood. The next morning, I awoke to a new email in my inbox, which simply stated, "Delicious. I'll pick up 200 milliliters next Tuesday. Don't reply. Your payment went through." I checked my Bitcoin wallet to confirm the message, and indeed, there was just over $425. I felt a rush of excitement at having been compensated for my blood as promised, but the word "delicious" left me even more unsettled, prompting an obvious question to arise in my mind. My thoughts were racing, questioning the madness of it all. yet I found myself indifferent. The allure of the money was too strong to ignore. Time slipped away, and on the following Tuesday, I filled 2 vials, placing them discreetly in my neighbor's mailbox. I lingered by the window, peeking through the curtains just like before. Shortly after 1 o'clock, the tall, pale figure emerged once more to collect the vials. The next morning, I checked my wallet, and to my surprise, it had increased by another $850. An email arrived, simply stating, "Delicious. I want more now. I need 500 million." This was very unsettling to me, but as unsettling as it was, this new order would cost 2.2 furs. At that point, I was too thrilled to care if it was draining my life force. It represented 2 months' worth of food and rent for me. I could probably buy some new clothes and games, so I didn't even hesitate. I ordered a few more vials on Amazon and eagerly awaited the week to pass. This time I made 5 vials. It seemed like a lot, and witnessing so much blood leaving my body felt surreal. I know only a little, less than that every time I've donated blood in the past, but doing it myself made me really anxious, and I was a little dizzy doing it too. Once again, I repeat the procedure, dropped it in the neighbor's mailbox again, and saw the same man show up to pick it up. Payment was made the next morning, followed by another email saying, "Delicious." The next one should be 1 lit. Reading this, I actually got a little nervous. 1 liter is a lot, but at the same time it is 40050, which is quite a lot of money. I googled if it is possible to do this, and it seems that while it wouldn't be fatal, there were certainly risks involved. Over the past 3 weeks, I had already administered 800 milliliters. I decided to proceed and ordered 10 more empty vials from Amazon. If I went through with this, it would be the last time for a while, at least until I recovered. I planned to inform my rare vampire client the following Tuesday. I prepared for the occasion, ensuring I had sugary cookies and water on hand, as I had felt a bit weak last time, and I knew this would require a lot of energy. I sat on my bed, inserted the needle, and began filling vial after vial. After about 7 vials, I felt heavy and noticed my complexion fading. The blood flowed quickly, and by the time I reached the 10th vial, my hands were trembling. I capped the vial and pressed a cotton ball against my arm, applying some pressure. I took a sip of water and placed a cold bottle against my forehead. Though I was sitting up, I felt on the verge of collapsing. I spent perhaps an hour sitting still, fighting the urge to faint. As my vision wavered intermittently, I mustered the strength to rise, carefully gathering the vials and placing them into a small box. I recall navigating my home, my hands grazing the walls for support, moving at a deliberate pace towards the neighbor's mailbox. I set the box down, adhering to my routine, and swiftly retreated indoors. Just as he emerged beneath the streetlight, I caught a glimpse of a crooked smile gracing his pale face as he opened the box and then vanished into the shadows, as was his custom. After that, I succumbed to exhaustion. As I lay on my bed, I checked my wallet upon waking and saw that the fourth 50 had been sent to my Bitcoin address. The next email was brief, reminiscent of the rest, deliciously straightforward. We discussed 1 more liter for next Tuesday, but I knew I couldn't commit to that, especially with just over a week to recuperate. I felt weak and fatigued, so I replied, explaining that I needed more time to recover and suggested we could revisit it next month. Almost immediately, I received a response insisting on 1 liter next Tuesday or else. A wave of unease washed over me. My stomach dropped at the thought of it. This situation is clearly unsettling, especially considering its appetite for blood. I can't even begin to fathom what it might do next. I sent an email to apologize and to clarify that I couldn't proceed, but moments later, I received a reply with the same demands, leaving me feeling cornered. I had to step away from my computer. There was nothing more I could do. The week passed in a blur, leaving me feeling exhausted and low on energy, with occasional bouts of dizziness. Finally, Tuesday arrived and I didn't draw blood. I sat by my window in the dark when at 1:00 I saw him emerge from the shadows. I watched as he hurried over to the neighbor's mailbox, opening the top. I paused for a moment, observing intently as he began to push some of the letters in with agitation. as if searching beneath them for something. Then he halted, gazing up at the sky, releasing a loud, hoarse whistle that shattered the stillness of the night, echoing his anguish. After a moment, he glanced around and walked away from the mailbox, seemingly empty-handed. I informed him in the email that I was unable to assist him this week. Then, he took another step towards the street. Just as I was about to, he halted and gazed directly out my window. In that instant, I froze, striving to remain completely still. All the lights in my house, including the one in my room, were off, so there was no way he could see me. His pale face and dark, browless eyes, which I could finally discern through the loose black hoodie, watched me for what felt like an eternity. I was paralyzed by fear. It struck me that perhaps it was indeed a supernatural being, its skin tone decidedly unearthly, as it turned its head once more, gazing towards the neighbor's house. It began to stride directly across the front yard. From my room, it vanished from view, prompting me to dash to the shower window, where I had a clearer sight of the neighbor's side yard. Peering out, I saw it attempting to climb through one of the side windows of the house. Suddenly, the sound of shattering glass echoed as it forcefully struck against it. In a swift motion, he entered the house. An instant later, I heard my neighbor begin to scream. First, he yelled for me to get out of his house, but then his cries shifted to those of sheer terror. Suddenly, there were loud bangs. I listened as the frantic screams persisted, accompanied by 3 small flashes behind the window. The screams escalated to a piercing pitch, but after the gunshots, they were silenced, leaving an eerie quiet. I turned from my shower window to glance at my neighbor, and then I froze. He lay on the floor, lifeless. Sure, he was shot 3 times in the chest. I stood there frozen, totally paralyzed with fear. 2 minutes passed, and then I watched as this monster escaped through the same window I had broken just a moment ago, disappearing into the darkness of the forest. The siren grew louder and louder, and out of the corner of my eye, I could see several blue and red lights advancing down the street. The noise would have woken up the whole neighborhood. I stared out into the woods, sensing its presence just beyond the trees. Edge of darkness, the patrol cars arrived swiftly, parking in front of the property. A small crowd had already gathered, eager to witness the unfolding events. I slipped on some shoes and stepped out the front door, merging with the onlookers. The atmosphere was thick with shock and fear, particularly regarding the news of the neighbor's murder. I felt a deeper sense of terror, still reeling from the revelation. It was a miracle I hadn't fainted, given my frail condition. As the officers entered the neighbor's house, one of them emerged and requested that everyone vacate the area as he summoned an ambulance and additional support. Soon after, several police vehicles arrived, cordoning off the crime scene surrounding the house. I was near enough to witness the ambulance personnel extracting him. It was a horrifying sight. Not only had he been shot, but the entire side of his neck appeared mangled, as if he had been assaulted by a wild beast. I was utterly appalled. This man was either deeply disturbed or possibly something otherworldly. But if it was the latter, I would not have had to force windows or resort to a firearm to end the life of my neighbor. So most likely it was the former. Now, this crazy bug had ended the life of an innocent man because of me. In a condition where he knew where I live, the cops questioned all the neighbors, including me. I saw no way to tell them what I knew without directly incriminating myself. I know this would have been the time to tell the police everything, but I knew it was my fault. I gave him their address and put the blood in the mailbox, so when a police officer inquired if I possessed any information that might assist, I merely mumbled about hearing gunshots and screams. I hurried home, locked the doors, and went to bed, feeling restless, anxious, and terrified. The following morning, I checked my emails, and not only was there nothing new, but everything had vanished. There was no trace of our conversations, no sign of her email anywhere, nothing. It was as if it had never existed, as if we had never spoken. Yet, there was something else deeply unsettling, and that was at the crime. In the scene, the officers discovered remnants of what seemed to be a peculiar type of paint, likely body paint, Suddenly, everything clicked into place in my mind. It explained the odd hue of his skin. I realized I wasn't entirely mistaken. This individual was a psychopath convinced he was a vampire. The most unsettling part was that, for a fleeting moment, I entertained the idea that he might actually be one. After that encounter, he vanished from my life, and I've been unable to speak with the authorities about it. I understand that reporting it would be the right course of action, but I find myself reluctant to delve into it any further. 34:26. This individual is no longer relevant, nor is the deep web. Matthew Alexander Falder was born on October 24th, 1988, and he grew up in an upper-middle-class family in the small English village of Knutsford in Cheshire. He later attended King's High School in nearby Warwick, where he apparently excelled in his studies before being accepted to study seismic oceanography at Clare College, University of Cambridge. After earning his BSc, Matthew continued in academia and earned an MSc and PhD. Throughout his extensive years of study, he went on to become a postdoctoral researcher. A researcher and lecturer at the University of Birmingham in the UK, he was known to be a very popular and outgoing individual, beloved by all who crossed his path due to his remarkable charisma and infectious humor. However, beneath this vibrant exterior lay a deep, dark, and unsettling secret. During his freshman or sophomore year in college, he shared a house with several other young students, a living arrangement commonly referred to as co-ed in America. Students are given the autonomy to select their most compatible housemates, irrespective of gender. This is how Matthew found himself sharing a living space with a girl whose identity remained unknown. On one occasion, she recounted Matthew's outrageous and unsettling sense of humor. He made a joke about secretly filming her while she used the shared bathroom. The suggestion was so absurd that she merely laughed, interpreting it as a joke. However, the reality was that he had indeed been filming her during that time. Showering in the shared bathroom was not merely a jest, it was a subtle revelation. Her lack of seriousness about it only fueled Matthew's troubling tendencies. As time went on, he became ensnared in a web of digital misconduct, leading to one of the most tragic and disgraceful criminal cases in British history. Like many of his peers, Matthew dedicated countless hours to the computer for research and study. Yet he found himself, with unwavering commitment, he immersed himself in his work, often spending 12 to 16 hours a day at the keyboard. While many would consider it monotonous to fixate on a screen for such extended periods, he thrived on it. The vastness of the internet captivated him, particularly when he stumbled upon the deep web. He began to explore what is referred to as Tor, an acronym for the Onion Router, a suite of free, open-source software that facilitates anonymous online browsing. Communication routes internet traffic through a vast, free global network comprising over 7,000 relays, all managed by dedicated volunteers from various corners of the world. For those who may not know, it acts as a router that safeguards a user's personal privacy by concealing their location and activities from anyone conducting network surveillance or traffic analysis. However, like any tool available on the web, it can be wielded for both beneficial and harmful purposes, depending on the user's intent. In Matthew's case, his motivations were decidedly nefarious, as he began to exploit his newfound anonymity to access extremely questionable content. Disturbing child exploitation websites featured usernames that mirrored the horrific nature of their content, such as 600, 666, Devil, and Evil Mind. Matthew not only indulged in some of the most graphically unsettling and eerie videos available on the dark web, an alarming feat in itself, but he also took it a step further by downloading and sharing them across various dark web platforms. These videos encompassed not only the abuse of children, but also the torture and execution of adults, the elderly, and animals, which he explored on sites like these. Deeply affected, yet seeking joy, Matthew found solace in various online spaces after long days at the university. However, his pursuit of amusement took a darker turn around 2009 when he began catfishing unsuspecting internet users. Initially, it was lighthearted mischief, like haggling with online vendors for absurdly low prices. But soon, it escalated to the point of enticing naive young individuals to meet him in secluded places for dubious adventures. Dates that never occurred. Yet rather than succumbing to tedium, he chose to amplify the breadth and intensity of his actions, with each step plunging deeper into darkness. It is said that in the early 2010s, Matthew stumbled upon an advertisement on Gumtree.com, posted by a 14-year-old girl seeking weekend babysitting work to earn some money. It is at this juncture that the warped psyche of this man propels him onto an irreversible journey of depravity and malevolence. He would secure a notorious position in the annals of his nation. Disguised as a fellow art student named Liz Matthew, he engaged the unknown girl in conversation, gradually earning her trust. As their interactions unfolded, Liz shared her artistic endeavors, claiming to create a series of still-life images featuring human subjects. This was the methodical approach Matthew employed to persuade the girl to send compromising photos of herself, all while maintaining the facade of innocent and artistic intentions. But what the young girl didn't know was that she was about to step into a sinister trap. After obtaining the teen's photographs, Matthew finally disclosed to her that Liz was a fabrication. He threatened his victim, stating that if she did not comply with his every demand, he would release the photographs online. He took his time contemplating what his first task would be, and when he eventually sent his demand via email to his victim, who was still in shock, she was utterly horrified. Matthew instructed the girl to take a photograph of herself in a compromising position. The toilet seat incident at her high school was not only a deeply humiliating and unsanitary ordeal for the victim, but also provided further leverage for blackmail, making it difficult for her to decline future demands. The identity of this young woman remains undisclosed for legal reasons, given her age at the time of the crime. However, she later provided an anonymous statement to the British media, expressing her feelings of shame about the horrific photos and her concern about what her friends might think of her actions. I sensed that no one would truly grasp my experience or take my words to heart, as there was no one physically restraining me or threatening my safety. Yet, that was the weight I carried daily for months. The young woman recounted how, in the weeks and months that followed, Matthew's messages became more twisted and perilous, arriving each day like clockwork. Each morning, I would find a message waiting for me, and even when I returned home from school, there would be another. The anxiety lingered, even in moments of silence between us. The girl found herself trapped in a relentless cycle, spending each day in anxious anticipation of the next message. The weight of the situation took a heavy toll on her studies and personal relationships. She withdrew from her family, ceased going out, and dedicated every waking moment to appeasing Matthew's demands, desperate to prevent the photos from surfacing. As she teetered on the brink of a complete breakdown, she pleaded with Matthew to let her go, having already acquiesced to all his requests, including sending more intimate photos of herself doing totally demeaning things. The girl confessed to wanting to take her own life. It's not surprising for someone so young who was being subjected to daily and prolonged abuse. Meanwhile, Matthew posted this content on one of his favorite hardcore websites. There, he wrote extensively about the torment he inflicted on her and bragged about trapping the 14-year-old girl in a web of despair and humiliation, claiming that his intention was to break her mentally and that she felt indifferent about her existence. Other entries in her diary featured a list titled 100 Things We Want to See at Least Once, which included disturbing items like a girl being used as a dartboard and a video depicting a child's bones being methodically broken by a clearly sadistic individual. When she mentioned the idea of ending her life, he shockingly encouraged her, claiming he had already shared her images on various dark websites, suggesting that if she went through with it, those same images would circulate further. Through the inboxes of her family, friends, and teachers, this man revealed himself as a true sadist, deriving pleasure from the pain and humiliation he inflicted on his victims. He relished her desperation and took delight in witnessing her psychological breakdown. The details of how the anonymous girl managed to escape Matthew remain unclear, but it is known that in at least one instance, he followed through on his threats, sending compromising photographs of her to her own parents. It is highly probable that this is the same anonymous girl who later gave an interview following her ordeal, as she is quoted at one point. "I no longer communicate with my family, believing they wouldn't comprehend my situation. When I eventually shared what transpired, they essentially placed the blame on me, leading to the deterioration of our relationship." After completing a cycle of manipulation, blackmail, and abuse, Matthew moved on to seek another target. The modern internet became a suitable hunting ground for such a depraved individual. Utilizing a collection of 70 meticulously constructed fake identities, Matthew's blackmail scheme persisted for many years. Numerous unsuspecting individuals have had their identities altered and kept under tight wraps. However, by examining the array of charges leveled against him, we can construct a rather vivid image of what Matthew compelled them to endure. Some of these allegations are so grotesque that even a horror channel would hesitate to air them. Yet the charges provide insight into the repulsiveness of his deeds. Among the less shocking accusations was, and I quote, compulsory forced labor, indicating that Matthew had coerced one of his victims through blackmail. Victims were coerced into completing minor tasks for him, effectively reducing them to modern-day servitude. Matthew faced 3 counts related to his involvement with an organized crime group, suggesting he may have exchanged evidence of his offenses with a vast online network of offenders. However, it wasn't solely inappropriate images that Matthew disseminated. The UK Crown Prosecution Service subsequently charged him with 2 counts of possession, and it is suspected that he merely downloaded one of the manuals used by predators, authored by an external source, while the second guide was likely crafted by Matthew himself, outlining precisely how he managed to manipulate numerous individuals from various backgrounds simultaneously. It is almost certain that this guide was discovered and downloaded by another British individual, a 36-year-old man from Norfolk named David Wilson, who confessed to 96 offenses linked to child exploitation in early 2021. The inquiry into Matthew's online conduct seems to have commenced around 2013, and over the following years, for 4 years, Britain's National Crime Agency collaborated with the U.S. Homeland Security, MI6, and the Australian Federal Police. The extent of Matthew's crimes was so shocking that even an unnamed Israeli intelligence agency took part in the operation, identifying him as one of the world's most prolific and dangerous cybercriminals. Following his initial hearing on October 16, 2017, Matthew pleaded guilty to 137 distinct offenses against 46 separate victims. 4 months later, he received a sentence of 32 years in prison, along with an additional penalty. The judge in the case imposed an additional 6 years without parole, characterizing Matthew as a deeply twisted and sadistic individual. His behavior was described as persistently manipulative and exceedingly cruel, revealing a clear enjoyment in the pain and suffering he inflicted on others. I hope your day is filled with health and joy. I invite you to subscribe to my channel to hear true horror stories. Hello, and see you again.